At first, you like them. The conversations feel easy. You feel seen, maybe even understood. But then something shifts. They get a little closer, a little more consistent, and suddenly you feel irritated, not at anything specific, just them. So you start pulling back, and you don't fully understand why. 2. Problem deep dive. It's subtle. They text more often. They want to spend more time together. They start remembering small details about you, and instead of feeling comfort, you feel pressure. You begin noticing things that didn't bother you before, the way they ask questions, the way they show interest, the way they try to get closer. None of it is objectively wrong, but it feels heavy. So you create space, you reply slower, you become less expressive, you start needing more time alone, and when they notice the shift, it makes it worse, because now there's expectation, and expectation feels like something closing in. This doesn't just affect relationships, it affects how you see yourself. You might start thinking, why do I lose interest so quickly? Why can't I just stay consistent? Why do I feel trapped when nothing is actually wrong? So you pull away completely. And once there's distance again, you feel normal, even calm. But then, over time, something else appears. A quiet loneliness. And the cycle starts again. So the question isn't just, why do you lose interest? It's deeper than that. Why does closeness feel like something you need to escape from? 3. Reframe. It doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you're incapable of connection. And it definitely doesn't mean something is broken inside you. What you're experiencing is a form of protection. Your brain is reacting to closeness not as comfort, but as potential loss of control. Because somewhere along the way, closeness stopped feeling neutral. It started feeling like something that could change you, define you, or even take something from you. So your mind learned a pattern. When distance decreases, tension increases. And that tension shows up as irritation, not because the person is the problem, but because of what their closeness represents. But what exactly does it represent? That's where things get more precise. 4. Psychological mechanism. This pattern is deeply connected to your brain's need for autonomy and identity stability. When someone gets emotionally close, your brain doesn't just register connection. It also starts predicting change. Because closeness naturally involves influence. Their opinions matter more, their presence affects your mood, their expectations begin to exist, and your brain notices this shift. In neuroscience, this involves interaction between the limbic system, emotional processing, and the prefrontal cortex, self-regulation and identity control. Here's what happens. Your limbic system detects increasing attachment. It flags it as something meaningful. But at the same time, your prefrontal cortex starts monitoring. Is this changing who I am? Am I losing control over my time, space, or identity? This creates internal conflict. Connection pulls you closer. Identity protection pushes you away. And the feeling that emerges from that conflict is irritation, not fear, not sadness, but a low-level resistance. Here's a simple mental model. Imagine your identity as a room. At first, someone stands outside the door, safe, distant. But as they get closer, they start stepping inside, not aggressively, just naturally. But your brain reacts as if space is being taken, even if nothing is actually being forced. So it sends a signal. Create distance. And that signal feels like annoyance, because annoyance is easier to act on than fear. You don't say, I'm afraid of losing myself. You say, I just need space. And it feels true, but it's only part of the story. 5. Practical framework. This pattern doesn't change by forcing yourself to stay close. It changes by understanding what your brain is trying to protect. 1. Identify the moment closeness turns into pressure. There's always a point where the feeling shifts, from neutral to slightly uncomfortable. What to do? Pay attention to the exact moment irritation begins, not after, right when it starts. Why it works. This increases awareness of emotional triggers, which reduces automatic avoidance responses. It brings the reaction into conscious processing. Real-life example. You're texting someone and suddenly feel drained. Instead of pulling away immediately, you notice. It started when they asked something more personal. Now the pattern is visible. 2. Separate the person from the pressure. Right now, your brain links them to the feeling, so it feels like they are the problem. What to do? Mentally separate. This is the person. This is the pressure I'm feeling. Why it works. This reduces emotional misattribution, a cognitive bias where feelings are assigned to the wrong source. It prevents unnecessary distancing. Real-life example. Instead of thinking, they're too much, you think, I'm feeling pressure right now. That small shift changes your response. 3. Reintroduce controlled closeness. Avoidance makes the brain more sensitive. Distance feels safe, but it reinforces the pattern. What to do? Stay engaged, but on your terms. Shorter interactions. Clear boundaries. Not complete withdrawal. Why it works. Gradual exposure reduces threat perception in the limbic system. Your brain learns that closeness doesn't automatically mean loss of control. Real-life example. Instead of disappearing for days, you stay present, but limit the depth or duration. The connection remains without overwhelming you. 4. Protect identity without pushing people away. Your brain fears losing control, so show it that control still exists. What to do? Maintain independent actions, time alone, personal decisions, uninfluenced choices. Why it works. This reassures the prefrontal cortex that identity stability is intact. Closeness no longer feels like a takeover. Real-life example. Even in a growing connection, you keep parts of your routine unchanged. Your sense of self remains anchored. 5. Tolerate the discomfort without reacting immediately. This is the hardest part, because irritation creates urgency. You want to act on it quickly. What to do? Pause before creating distance. Let the feeling exist for a moment without responding. Why it works. This interrupts automatic avoidance patterns and builds emotional tolerance. Over time, the intensity decreases. Real-life example, you feel the urge to withdraw. Instead of pulling away, you wait. Even just a few minutes. The feeling shifts slightly, and that's enough to change your action. 6. Integration. At its core, this isn't about losing interest. It's about protecting your sense of self. Closeness doesn't just bring connection, it brings influence, and your brain is trying to manage that balance. So when someone gets close, it asks, can I stay myself in this? If the answer feels uncertain, it creates distance. Not because you don't care, but because your identity feels at risk. And once you see that, the pattern starts making sense. You're not pushing people away randomly. You're responding to a perceived loss of control, and that perception can change. Slowly. 7. Quiet, empowering. Close. Closeness doesn't have to mean losing yourself, but your brain won't believe that until it experiences it. Not in theory. In small, real moments. Moments where someone gets closer, and you stay. Not perfectly, not comfortably, but consciously. And over time, the space between connection and control starts to feel less like a conflict and more like something you can hold at the same time. Because maybe the goal isn't to avoid closeness or to force it. Maybe it's simply this, to learn that you can let someone in without disappearing in the process.